Yes, I know who you are. You are not a snort. You are not a cat. You are not a chicken. You are a human being, created in the image of God with a divine spark, a soul. Took the wisdom from Dr. Seuss, no less, to tell you the conventional wisdom. You know who you are, right? Well, this conventional wisdom wasn't always so conventional. Jewish people around the world start learning the great Sefer from Maimonides, the Rambam, today. And the Rambam, one of my favorite stories that I heard growing up, it's called The Rambam and the Cat. Well, the Rambam was a great Torah scholar, and he was also a phenomenal doctor. And he attracted the attention of the king that time, the Sultan, Suladan, and he was brought in to be the chief doctor for the king. Now, the other advisors didn't really like this Jewish guy taking all the greatest positions, and then the king would ask him questions, and the Rambam was able to give him good advice, and so they were always trying to devise ways to get rid of the Rambam. Once, they overheard the Rambam talking about what it means to be human, and how fundamentally different it is from being an animal. And they felt, aha, here's where we can get him, because we know that animals are pretty much the same as human beings. Maybe human beings are a little bit smarter or more sophisticated, but we're all, when you come down to the core of it, just a bunch of animals. And so they decided to make a bet to the king. They said, hey, the Rambam, you think he's such a smart guy. He says that an animal is not the same as a human being. And we want to show him wrong, that we're going to take a cat off the street. We're going to train him to act like a mensch, to act like a human being. And when we show that the Rambam is so silly and he doesn't know what he's talking about, you'll get rid of the Rambam and we'll be rid with this guy. And so the king agreed and the bet was on. They found a stray alley cat and they worked with him. They're the best trainers in the world. And they taught him to put on a suit and a tie and set the tables and lay out all the nice food, and they taught him to use a fork and a knife and sit down and eat just like a mensch. Really, no different. He was able to sit and be just like a regular human being. And so, after a few months training and getting ready, the test was on, and it was the big day. The night before, the advisors of the king, they were practicing for a long time, but the Rambam, he was focused on learning. He was a great Torah scholar, answering people's questions and different challenges and hardships that people were going through. And he realized it's the night before, and he hasn't even prepared his side of the big show. All of a sudden, he hears a little squeaking in the corner. Hey, looks, what is that? He decides, you know what? I am going to put out a little mousetrap. Takes a little cheese and puts it in a box and sets up a trap. And before you know it, goes back to learning. He hears a little thump. He goes and retrieves the box. He puts it in a little pouch. And he takes it with him the next day. Come in. The grand hall is set for a feast. It's beautiful. And everybody's waiting for the grand entry where the cat comes in. And the king and queen are sitting at the top of the table, and in walks the cat, carrying a tray, and goes and serves all the different people, and everybody's, wow, this cat, he acts so menschlich, he's such a human. And then they set a seat right up next to the queen. You got the king, you got the queen, you got the cat. And he sits there by the table and he starts eating with a fork and a knife, and everybody's awed. Look at these guys. They really trained this cat. He's no different than a human being. We showed the Rambam. Then the Rambam takes out of his pouch a little box, lifts the lid up, and out scurries the mouse. And as the mouse scurries across the table, the cat that's sitting there next to the queen jumps up, kicks the bowl of soup into the queen's face and starts scurrying across, and knocking off all the plates, and the fish is flying everywhere and their forks going all over the place. And the mouse jumps down and goes in between everybody's feet, and what's going on over here? And the cat is chasing him throughout the whole hall, up and down, until the mouse just bolts it right out of the door. And shortly thereafter, the cat follows him, and ever since then, cats have been chasing mice. And so the king was able to see that the Rambam was correct, that that there is a fundamental difference between an animal and a human being. There's another story of a prince who went a little bit meshug, started going crazy, and he started sitting under the table. Instead of eating like a normal human being, he would act like a chicken. And whenever anybody would try to talk to him and say, "No, you're the prince, you gotta act like a mensch," he would say, I'm a chicken. And finally, they got doctors from far and wide to try to come and heal the prince, and they didn't know what to do. Finally, this one guy said, "I know how to heal him. I can make a big difference." And so the king said, "Here's a big reward. Anybody who can heal my son, go at it." And so this doctor gets down and he goes under the table and he starts pecking away at the food under the table too. And the guy said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm a chicken as well. Leave me alone." And the two of them, now the king's really beside himself. First I had my son going crazy. Now I got him a sugar and a doctor as well. How did that help me? And the two of them are going at it. After a while, the doctor says, "You know what? I want to put on a comfortable pair of pants." And the prince says, "What? But you're a chicken. You can't wear pants." He said, "Yeah, but it's cold and dirty out here. Why should only the humans get to wear pants? Well, we should also, even though we're chickens, we should be able to wear pants." And he thinks about it for a minute and he says, "You know what? You're right. Okay, I'll put on the pants." And they both put on a pair of pants. A little while later, he says, "You know what? I want to put on a nice shirt." And he said, "What are you doing? I thought you were a chicken." He said, "I am, but why should only the human beings be allowed to wear a shirt? We should be able to wear a shirt too." And so they both put on a shirt, and slowly but surely, they both start sitting at the table. They both start eating normal food. Why should only the humans be able to do that? Why should only human? Until the chicken is slowly but surely acting more and more like a mensch to the point where it's indistinguishable. So the nekuda, the idea from both of these stories is that you could try to pretend like you're something that you're not, but at the end of the day, it's really impossible to go all the way to the far end of that. And at the core, there's something unique that makes us human, that when we try to deny it, when we try to just live, the pleasures of life, and you're enjoying and you're happy and everything's good and well without the deeper search for something loftier, for a transcendence beyond oneself, at the end of the day, you're the chicken under the table. You can live like that for a certain amount of time. You could fool yourself, but you can't keep doing that forever. It doesn't last. And in this week's Parsha, we have a Magefa, a big plague that wipes out 24,000 of the Jewish people. And after the plague, there's a census, and in the counting of who's remaining after 24,000 Jews had fell in this plague in the desert, we see that there's someone very interesting counted over here. Uvenei Korach lo mesu. It says that the children of Korach didn't die. If you remember from a few weeks ago, there was the big rebellion against Moshe. Korach and his whole assembly got swallowed up by the earth alive. And yet, the sons of Korach, they had teshuvah. They felt remorse in their heart. They don't want to live not in accordance to who they're really supposed to be. And they couldn't tolerate it anymore. And they just felt in their hearts and in thought that they want to repent. They want to become human again. They want to do the right thing. And that alone was enough to bring them salvation, that they should come up from under the ground and be counted amongst the Jewish people who went into the land of Eretz Yisrael, this census at the very end of the 40-year wandering in the desert. And the lesson for each and every one of us is clear, that we can live in denial of our truest self, that transcendence, that yearning for holiness, that yearning for something beyond for a certain amount of time. But when push comes to shove, our real self is going to come out. And when we do teshuvah, like the Frierdiker Rebbe said, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe said, "La'alter l'teshuvah, li'alter l'geula." As soon as we wake up and we realize who we really are, and we start acting according to our truest self, that will bring about the redemption. And just like the Magefa back then went away and got completely removed, that any sort of illness or pandemic or any of those types of things will be completely eradicated with the coming of Mashiach, and we'll see health and happiness and our true selves come out. A l'chaim and a good Shabbos to everyone.